All right. Hello. Welcome to the Elder Nerds. It's Friday. This is episode 4. We got.
Yay.
All right.
I'm here with Pete Hernandez,
Hey.
and our friend, a new entry today is our friend Michael Delapine from California. Mike's an old friend, and this we're probably going to be talking about more about shop today. About Mike is a professional letterer, an artist, and so is Pete. And
Hey.
I dabbled in the comics industry in and out for years, but we're just going to wing it as well. But Mike,
Yes.
since you're new, I'll let you say hello. And why don't you hype your what you do, your activities, and everything, and I'll let you speak for a few minutes.
All right. Well, hi everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Glad you guys are all listening in. My name is Michael DeLapine, and I have been involved in the comics industry for as long as I can remember.
Good.
Um, I graduated from the School of Visual Arts
Oh,
uh,
so did
with
I.
a with a degree in cartooning, a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in cartooning and graphic design. From there, graduated in 1988. Before that, I went to the High School of Art and Design.
No.
I graduated from there. Um, Towards the end of my time at the School of Visual Arts, I got involved with DC Comics. I studied under various professional instructors, considered gods of the industry at that time. Will Eisner being one, Harvey Kurtzman from Mad Magazine being another,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that took me under his wing the most was Joe Orlando, who at the time was the vice president of special projects at DC Comics. And the next thing I knew, I was working at DC in their production bullpen, doing art and lettering corrections to the tune of about 85 titles a month.
Wow.
So I did that for a little over a year, and then I went freelance as a letterer. And even though I could draw, I got drawn into lettering primarily because it was a quicker paycheck.
Mm.
I was making $25 a page for lettering, no matter
Mm-hmm.
how many letters went into a page of art. And this was back during the time when computers weren't prevalent in
Right.
letter or coloring. I was lettering pages directly on the original artwork.
You're using those little metal blocks, the letters that were cut out on those metal blocks.
No, no, no.
We're not that
You're,
old.
That's Gutenberg shit. No.
it's like the dawn of lettering, right?
Yeah. No, I was using that little funny looking plastic thing, those Ames lettering guides. I was using that in the T square and stuff.
Oh, okay. Oh, God.
Yeah, I was using those. And I had to match the styles of all the house letterers that they had at DC when I was doing it there.
Oh,
But
God.
yeah, I was lettering all kinds of books and doing art corrections for DC. And then after about a year or so, I went freelance. And back then, even though sadly $25 a page is pretty much unheard of for a letterer's page rate now.
Mm-hmm.
You
What do they
know,
pay nowadays?
nobody is paying that anymore.
What
And
do they pay nowadays?
Uh,
What do they pay nowadays?
more like 10.
Wow. Because
Wow.
are they
Jesus.
charging less? Are they offering less because it's digital, so they feel it's easier?
I think that's part of it. I think that's
Mm.
part of it. And everybody out there feels that as long as they have a computer and a cool lettering font from Comic Craft or Blambot, then suddenly they're a letterer. There's so
Right.
much more that goes into it than that.
Like what?
Well, a letterer, I've always felt, is an unsung hero in
Oh, absolutely.
in
Absolutely.
the theme of comic book production.
They
The
get no
letterer,
love.
I think, is one of the most important jobs You know, and I'm not saying that to hype myself up. You know, I think it's the honest to God truth. The letterer is the person that is sort of the traffic cop for the whole process. They have to guide the reader's eye where it's supposed to go.
Right.
You know,
Put
and
emphasis on the.
don't take that into consideration.
Like the letterers decide to put emphasis on certain words to convey a sort of a voice in what's being said. It's like certain if the right words have to be bold or stronger to let them know when they're yelling or they're talking or they're somber or regretful. And we were talking about this last week, Gary and I, very briefly, that letterers get, all due respect, they get no love.
No, not anymore.
They're like the drummers in a band. Like the drummer gets ignored, but without the drummer, the beat can't, the timing is gone. The song won't work.
And it's an interesting thing because I have a major disagreement with Richard Starkings, and we've always had this disagreement. And I love him; he does great work, but he comes from the school of thought that a letterer should be invisible. That their work in the framework of a comic book should go unnoticed and undetectable.
Why?
See, that's the part that I don't get, because
it's part of the whole thing is art. The whole thing is art and text working together. So lettering is one of the art forms that is necessary to make comics happen. So why should it be invisible?
That's right. It's as much of an art form as the rest of the process. So
sure it is.
Notice there are great letterers who will not only enhance good work, but they'll enhance bad artwork as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the reverse is also true. Bad lettering will bring down great artwork.
That's true. I've seen some indie guys with really beautiful artwork, and then the word balloons or word bubbles, depending on your preference, I guess, is either gigantic, and then the text is very blocky, and like the line spacing is too wide, and the font is the font size is so small that you can barely see what you're reading.
That's right.
It kills it. That's like, for me, when that happens, I'm done. I can't even get into what I'm looking at.
I agree with you. I'm the same way. And not only that, I'm very much of an advocate of who has come before us, especially in terms of lettering, because I pay attention to lettering all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to go into lettering, you need to know who the great letterers are and were in this industry. You need to know who Artie Simek was. You need to know who Ben Oda was. You need to know who Kenny Bruzenak is. You need to know who Alex J is. You need to know who
Tom Orzechowski?
Tom Orzechowski, thank you.
Which Pete
was the name I was going to come up with.
Well, Pete, this is what I wanted you two guys to get together, because you're both coming from professional backgrounds, but from different areas. While Mike is more of an illustrator, vector-based, Pete, you do all your stuff in Photoshop, and you were telling me earlier that you're more self-taught, but you just looked at comics or studied Orzechowski's stuff or read his book.
I always studied lettering on my own. I don't know. I can't explain why. When I was a kid reading comics, I would just kind of take my time reading what was written, and I would notice when certain words were made bolder than others, or when somebody was whispering, how they would make the font really small but still readable. It would be like maybe 6 points or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, as a kid, I was like, oh, that's cool. I get it. He's whispering, Because it was like the tiny font would be in the center of a fairly big word balloon to get the point across. And little things like that just kind of jumped out at me. So it always caught my attention. And then I read some articles by Orzechowski, and is Todd Klein a letterer? I think that's another. Yes, okay, that's another article. Yeah, I read another article from him. And I had to, I couldn't find anybody to letter my stuff, so I had to figure out how to do it. And so I started looking up articles and learning what I can and just kind of going from there. But
And not only that, Todd Klein, in and of
mhm,
himself, he has created a wonderful source for letterers on the internet in
mhm,
terms of the history of comic book lettering. And it's
right.
very thorough and precise and very informative. I wish I had the link in front of me. But
I think I've been to that site. If not, it was somebody that was maybe piggybacking off of his site. But I remember even in school when many moons ago when they were talking about lettering, when the guys used to do it with those metal blocks that had every letter of the alphabet carved into each individual block. Like there was an
yeah,
A, and a B block, and they would press the blocks onto like an ink pad, I think
yeah,
it was, and then they would and you have to line up the sentence. And I don't know how they did it. I mean, it was
that's just nuts.
super time consuming.
Yeah, yeah. Who has the time anymore for that crap?
Could
But
you imagine? No comic would ever come out on time because
no, they wouldn't. No.
I mean, you know what I wanted to ask since you're a pro, um, what's the standard font size for comic book dialogue? Is it 10 points or 8 points?
It's more along the lines of uh, depending on the artwork and
Hmm.
what the letterer is comfortable with. It should be between 6 and 8 points.
Okay.
Really, for a comic book page?
Yeah,
I always thought it was like Pete said, 10 point as well for
I
some
always
yeah.
thought it
reason.
was, I figured because 10. I know unless it's changed, but the New York Times used to use 10 point font, and when in these these old ass Quark Express classes, they always wanted you to work in 10 point fonts, and it was like a standard.
Yeah,
It
because
was a good
Well,
standard body type.
keep in mind, nobody is lettering on original art anymore.
Right.
So when we were still doing that, then 10 points made a bit more sense.
Okay.
And in some cases, it was slightly even larger.
okay, so now that if you're working in digital, it should be smaller. Why? For scalability?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
not only for scalability, but just to make sure everything copacetically fits on the artwork. Because
Right.
remember, as a letterer, you don't want to cover up any important pieces of art.
Right. You could
And
def-
as I was as I was saying before about controlling the flow of traffic, every
hmm
comic book page in terms of lettering constantly reads from left to right and top to
hmm
bottom at the same
hmm
time, simultaneously.
Right.
So everything is going in a diagonal slant.
hmm
From the top uh, left-hand corner of the page to the bottom right-hand corner of the page. So no matter how the flow snakes back and forth or up and down, that's always going to be the starting point and the finishing point.
Hmm.
So you as a letterer have to make sure that you get from that point A to point B for every page and still convey the story that's supposed to be told in the confines of that page and not cover up any significant artwork in the process.
Right.
And then make sure that the reader's eye flows. Okay, I want the reader's eye to go here next. Now I want the reader's eye to go here next. That's the letterer's job.
I've seen uh, some older comics. I don't know if they still do it now, but every once in a while, say take like Matt Wagner's Mage, and every now and then the character's head would overlap the word balloon as if the balloon was going behind his head, and I guess the lettering or I'm not sure who lettered it, who lettered the Mage books, but the lettering would of course flow with the curve of the person's head. Is that something that's still done, or is that like kind of a no-no? Or
Depending on who you ask, a lot of people would say it's a no-no.
right?
personally don't have a problem with it as long as it's not overused.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's overused, it quickly becomes a gimmick.
Right.
And it loses its luster that way.
Like panel breaks, like characters breaking the panel can become really just unappealing really quickly if it's used too
right. Yeah, I think the only book that exists that it's still appealing is Deadpool. But
right.
No.
Huh. Okay. That's interesting. I thought, something like that is, if you have the head behind the balloon, it's, very like a stylistic choice. I guess they were conveying some sense of, depth or dimensionality when they're doing it for some reason as an emphasis. But
yeah, the only book I can think of that right off the top of my head is Mage, because I saw it recently, like a week or two ago.
Oh, okay. And I'm trying to look up the credits online, and they list everyone but the letterer for some reason.
I'm not sure. At one point, Matt Wagner was doing almost everything. I think it was him and a colorist in the beginning, and then I think somewhere along the lines they got a letterer. But this was ages ago, back when Comico existed.
Okay. Now, Mike, I want to ask you something which will lead into you and Pete discussing, which when we talked about when you were here in New York, you started in the 80s and you were old school, and then the computer came and you had to transition over to the computer. And from what I've seen of a lot of letterers, I don't know a lot of letterers. I know like Taylor Esposito through mutual friends, Pat Brousseau came into my store once or twice before he moved out west. But everybody seems to do it in Illustrator, all the lettering, and that seems to be the way it started, I guess, with Star Kings. But Pete, you do it all in Photoshop, which I think is very interesting, because when I see ads, and I'm in advertising and I'm in the production department, but when I see ads on like the subway or newspapers, you could tell what's done in Photoshop, because the lettering always seems, even when it's anti-elast, it seems to always have like this fuzzy look about it. There's like soft edges, while doing everything vector based gives everything a sharp, crisp edge.
Well, I don't rasterize the lettering. The lettering stays vector, because I remember Photoshop incorporated a lot of Illustrator tools over the years.
Right. Okay.
But when like the balloon shapes and the the font doesn't have to be rasterized. Not like back in the days.
That's true.
Okay.
The font can be edited anytime, and you have the options of sharp, bold, crisp, strong. So yeah, the lettering in Photoshop is always stays vector based unless you rasterize it.
Oh, okay. I thought it would still, when you're flattening layers or saving it as PNG or a JPEG or whatever, that it automatically rasterizes it and creates that fuzzy look to it.
It could also be the designer in question. Some of these designers don't save out at high res, which is crazy. But I've seen it from dealing with some clients. Some of these guys save out a little bit low, and then the printer blows it up, and you get that fuzzy feel.
Oh, okay. Now, Mike, have you done lettering in Photoshop, or are you just still strictly Illustrator?
Say that again, Gary.
I was going to say, are you have you done it in Photoshop, or are you still strictly Illustrator based when it comes to your lettering?
I'm strictly Illustrator based. I was warned from the very beginning never to use Photoshop, to do lettering, and it's just something that I've always stuck with. I'm not sure about how Photoshop would be with lettering now, the way the program has progressed in Adobe Creative Suite, but back in the day, it involved a couple of extra steps to do it in Photoshop just to get it to look the same way that it did in Illustrator. Illustrator just struck me as being the easier of the two methods to use, and that's just something I gravitated to and stuck with.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I don't know. I was going to say Illustrator to me seems a little bit more type friendly, type based than Photoshop. At least when they first started in the early
now it's different, 'cause
'90s.
they merged, they grabbed so many of the core Illustrator tools and they incorporated them into Photoshop for whatever reason, I don't know. But as Photoshop kept evolving, they kept bringing in more of the other programs. They started bringing in 3D tools. They brought in Illustrator tools. There's video editing tools.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I don't know why. It's almost like they're pushing their own programs to the side.
Now, just to jump back on what we were talking about a few minutes ago in terms of the size, it led me to look up on BalloonTales.com, which is part of the Comic Craft website, which is North Richard Starking. And on that page, I found the section on picking a point size. And this is what he says on it. The question was posed to him: I assume you work full size on a 10 by 15 artwork. So what point size and leading do you use in Illustrator? The answer is that will depend on the font, since fonts can be created at different sizes. I design all of our balloon lettering fonts to print at the same relative size. And we generally use them at 9.5 size and 10 leading for full-size art.
Wow.
Or 6.35
Wow.
size to 6.7 size leading.
Jeez, that's tight. That's tight leading, man.
That is tight. Now,
that's really tiny. That sounds like something for a CD cover, like for the credits on a CD.
Now, he says this is on the small side, but most of the books we letter, especially the X-Men books, are pretty heavy on copy.
Gotcha.
So a half or a full point size bigger for lighter copy books.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
The surest way, however, is to print out samples of various sizes and match one up to a size you like in a printed comic. Then enlarge it 150% if you're pasting it onto full-size artboards.
So something like Sin City is almost definitely a 10-point font because it's very minimalist in terms of lettering and instead of dialogue and narrative. So there's plenty of space. But yeah, I could totally see the X-Men, because especially in the Claremont era, Claremont used to just people used to just talk. They would just talk for fun, just talk and talk and talk.
And back during the Byrne and Austin years, that was done by hand by Tom Wasakowski.
Oh gosh,
that wasn't computer at all.
He's got to have arthritis now. Because Claremont, they talk so much. They even talked while they were punching each other. They had so much shit to say.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's entering the 6.35 or whatever size, because that's just a little bit bigger than legal text.
Yeah, that's super tiny. That's
like you use on an ad or something. Legal text is like 5 point. That's interesting. 6.35.
But when you're talking about a copy-heavy book, that it makes sense.
Right, because you have to get more in.
Yeah, that is true.
And it's still readable, and it may violate the unwritten rule on how many words you should use in a word balloon, especially from a writer's perspective. But from a letterer's perspective, it makes sense.
Right.
I look back at Batman Hush with Jim Lee and Scott Lee. And the lettering on that, it was very copy heavy. And it was so much so, it was very reminiscent of reading the X-Men.
Right.
Because I was reading, especially like the last few issues of the run, and I'm like, damn, this is a lot of text in this.
Yeah.
You know,
Somebody,
and it
some,
was compelling. It was still a great story. It didn't detract from the story at all. But then looking at, I remember one of the last scenes in the last issue. Batman is in a cell with the Riddler, and he's interrogating him. And they've got this nice dialogue banter back and forth. And it was great dialogue. But there was this one panel where you see a full shot of Batman, and the balloons are just crowding around him, almost as if the balloons were piranha. You know,
like a meatball.
They were all over the place. I was like, damn, man.
Like it was just Batman and the balloons.
Yeah, you know, and I thought to myself, you know, this could have been constructed better, and it probably would have involved pacing. It probably would have involved adding an extra page, which I'm sure fans of Jim Lee would not have minded, you know, because he knows how to construct a page visually, you know, and make it look compelling, you know, and that only draws back to the masters that were there before him. I don't know if anybody listening is familiar with the 22 Wally Wood panels that always were.
Of course.
If you look closely, you'll see them in almost every good comic.
Of course. But that's interesting that you can see when you see bad lettering and bad balloon placement. Do you?
I just cringe.
Yeah, you create and you kind of go through your head what you would have done differently.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I think of, you know, why the fuck did he make that choice? And then I think to myself, okay, this is how I could have done that a little better. You know, I mean, there is let's see, I'm looking at my library. This was a book that was published by NBM Publishers. And I know you're familiar with those guys, you know, because they reprint for the American market all kinds of foreign edition stories.
Right.
Excuse me. There was this one book that they did, and it was in 4 volumes. It was called Raptors, and it was this cool, sexy vampire story that was done by Defoe and Marini. And I look at the one thing that drives me crazy, because I know this is a foreign edition. It had to have been translated to the American market. And when they hire the translators to do that and they redo the lettering in English, they're using the original balloon placements and caption placements. And there is so much empty space left around the balloons or captions, you know, because of the translations, that, you know, it's like, it's too much. You know, it's too much space.
Well,
it shouldn't be too tight, but it shouldn't be so loose either.
Well,
you know?
two things. One, couldn't have been that the balloons and narrative boxes were drawn into the artwork instead of just being placed on a different layer. And two, I mean, I agree that sometimes there is too much air, but I like a lot of air. I like some air around the lettering because for readability.
Depending on the style of the art, you know, but sometimes tighter works best too. And I brought up Raptors because just as an experiment, just for fun, I took the first page of the first issue of Raptors and I brought it into Photoshop. I erased out all of the lettering and all the balloons. I redrew the artwork that was missing from where I took out the word balloons and captions. And after I did that, then I relettered it.
Huh.
And I did it tighter.
I would like to see that. You should put a side-by-side on your Facebook page and let us see how you did.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
So you did the artwork retouching in Photoshop, but you still did the traditional lettering in Illustrator.
Correct.
Okay, and when you
Yeah, after it was done in Photoshop, I brought the page into Illustrator.
right, and so do you save that file as an Illustrator file, or do you bring it back into Photoshop and save it as like a high-res JPEG or PDF or something?
No, once I bring it into Illustrator, I save it as an Illustrator file.
Oh, okay.
And then I eventually turn it into a JPEG or PDF.
Okay, and is there a difference in size when you do it in Illustrator as opposed to Photoshop?
I believe there is. I'm comfortable with the with the transition that way. Of course, every letterer and designer is going to be different as far as that goes, and whatever works for them. That's just basically the way I do it.
Oh, okay. Okay, and Pete, you just do everything from soup to nuts in Photoshop.
Yeah, with the exception of sketching.
Oh, okay.
Like I sketch most of it by hand, most of the figures by hand. Actually, all the figures, and then backgrounds and everything else, I'll just do in Photoshop. Just because over the years of just coming up with my own method to do it on my own, because I couldn't afford to hire anybody and I wasn't going to ask anybody to work for free. So, just making my way to learning what I needed to, what I didn't learn in school and figuring it out so I can get it done, I became more comfortable with just doing my backgrounds in Photoshop because I like them to be really sharp and crisp and clean. Because when I color, I just like clean artwork. And I don't mind looking at sketchy artwork. I just don't want to do it.
Okay.
I like really clean, almost like animation. I guess also. I mean, I had a year or two of animation in the early days of college when I was in Philly, and I guess that's always stuck in my head, just making your work really clean before adding color or effects or what have you.
Oh, okay.
So it just stuck with me. That's just my preference. I like all kinds of art. I'm not too particular with art. I'm open to a lot of it. I do, however, get really annoyed by cross hatching.
How so? I love cross hatching.
Too much cross hatching just gets on my fucking nerves. I feel like it's like a fake detail. Like I had an argument with some inker who obviously was a fan of cross hatching because it made the work look more detailed. I said it's just scribbles.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. They've been doing cross hatching for centuries. Come on, man. From wood engravings and cross hatching adds depth, shadow, light. You can control the way it looks. It's not a gimmick.
It was like dirt.
No, see, I don't like stippling. To me, stippling is like the person couldn't decide whether to put a line or a solid black, so he puts a dot.
Yeah. I had an instructor at the High School of Art and Design.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pens that we all used to use collectively that pretty much every art student loved was the Kohinoor or Statler Mars Rapidograph.
Right.
Rapidograph, yep.
And we used to use them in class all the time, and we had this one teacher, Mr. Nagley. I'll never forget him.
I remember him.
And he said he must have been on some rant about something else, and it just carried over. And he said, "Class, please do not use your rapidographs for stippling effects because it looks like cockroach shit and it's stupefying." It just made me crazy.
Wait a minute. Was Nagley the one with the British accent? Was he the old? Because I had an illustration teacher in art design that I ended up hating, and he had a fake English accent, and I can't remember if it was Nagley or not.
That sounds like him.
And Mike,
he had alive.
He is? I thought he died.
No, I think he's still alive.
Oh well, the one I'm thinking of, I think is dead.
Oh well, A&D isn't there anymore. That's a shame.
Well, actually, it is. It's just in a different building, right.
Yeah, they just.
Oh, okay. And Mike, you graduated what, in 84?
83.
83. And Pete, when did you graduate?
'87. So I'm right behind Mike.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Were they still doing traditional uh, lettering or there was no computers at A&D in '87,
No,
were there?
I didn't see any computers until I was in SVA in visual arts, and that was like, say, maybe 1990, 89 or 90, and it was Type Twister, black and white font making program for the Mac.
I remember that.
so you
Type Twister?
Yeah.
so you guys just missed each other by like a year or so, I
Yeah,
guess.
we did.
Sort of. When he was leaving, I came in like a couple of months later, basically.
Oh, okay.
So I had pretty much all the same instructors that he did, with one or with minor exceptions. Like I didn't have Joe Orlando. In college I did have Eisner. I had Kurtzman. I had Hasten.
Yeah.
I had Gene Colan.
Yep, I had Gene.
And Gene. Did Gene make you watch Bullet every time you didn't feel like giving a lesson?
Yes, he did.
Okay. I've never seen. I mean, at one point I hated Steve McQueen's Bullet because we saw it like a dozen times in the semester. Because Gene would come in and goes, today I want to show you the greatest movie about, that tells you the best, that it has the best storytelling. It's one of my favorites. I want you to study everything.
Film noir favorite. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And he would wheel out that 3-shelf metal cart and with the TV on top and the VCR in the middle and pop in Bullet and not have fade out into some book or something. I don't know what.
Really?
Oh yeah. We saw Bullet all the fucking time. Kind of think
it's true. I can attest to that.
Yeah, when we walked into class, if the TV VCR setup was there, we were like, "Oh, we're watching Bullet."
Really, this is where your parents' hard-earned dollars were going.
That's right. It all went to Blockbuster rentals of that one movie.
But
That's the only movie.
I'll tell you one thing about Gene Colan's class.
Uh-huh.
You developed a new respect for Gene Colan as a penciler because that mofo was hard to ink.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
He's very hard to ink.
He had cool guests too. Like he would have Carmine Infantino come in, and he would have a couple of other guys from the company. I can't remember. I remember Carmine coming in once or twice, and I forget who else. I mean, these are some of the real old school guys.
We had some guests in Joe Orlando's class come in too. We had Frank Miller come in once.
Oh wow, that would have been cool.
Yeah, that was very cool, and that was at the height of Daredevil stuff.
Wow.
That was way before he went crazy.
Yeah. We had Chaikin come in once. Howard Chaikin.
Oh wow.
We had Dennis Cowan come in once.
Mm-hmm.
We had Walt Simonson come in once, and Walt Simonson later became an instructor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Walt Simonson was great. I met him at a con. He's awesome.
Yeah, he is awesome.
Him and his wife. Is he still with Louise?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They were
forever.
They are like the sweetest people in comics. I met them at a convention, and it was like if they had a porch and lemonade, they would have invited you to sit down. They were just so welcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always will.
Yeah, they are. But just to go back, this is cool that you guys just missed each other at A&D and SVA. That's really cool. But you had the same instructors. And Pete, you never did an internship or anything at Marvel or DC or anything?
No, I actually almost got into Marvel. This is my one that got away story. I was like 23, and I don't even remember how I got the interview. I went in to interview for a computer design position, and at the time I had only used PC. And a friend of mine tried giving me a crash course on the Mac the night before. I had never used a Mac. I only had a PC. So I tried to bullshit my way through the thing, and I just choked. I mean, choked. Like, I was sweating. I was just like, oh, I'm doomed. I just totally blew it. So I happened to have my portfolio with me. I walked over to the art director, who I cannot remember who the guy was. I can't remember his name for the life of me. This is ages ago. And I told him, I said, listen, I'm a PC guy. I totally blew it with this Mac thing. I'm just, I blew it. That's it. It's a dead deal. And I had my portfolio in my hand, and I said, could I show you some of this anyway? So it's not a total wash, me coming here. And he went through my portfolio, and at the time it was all just pinups, which is the last thing you're supposed to show them. They want to see sequential.
Yeah, yeah.
I just, I bulled my way into the thing, and I just kept bullying my way through. I'm just like, fuck it, I'm here. I'm going to do something. And so I showed him what I had. He liked it. And I liked it enough that he wanted to test me on a story. But at the time, my insecurity was such that I thought he was blowing me off. And he gave me a 4-page Deadpool script. And Deadpool was brand new at the time. Like, hardly anybody even knew who the character was. So I took the script, went home, illustrated the pages. But the whole time I kept thinking that it was just a polite blow-off. And I kept looking. I wanted paying work. I just wanted to work and make money. And I ended up never going back with the pages, even though I finished them. I only penciled them. I didn't ink or anything. I was just doing penciling at the time. And I ended up getting a gig designing CD covers for this company on 33rd Street, which was a great gig. But I just kept freelancing and doing graphics because I just wanted money, money, money. And I thought Marvel blew me off, and I just kind of pissed away my opportunity.
Oh man!
So I never went back. I'll tell you, after illustrating the pages, when I finished them, and I was giving serious thought to taking it back to Marvel because it had taken me a little while. I got the design gig, and I just jumped right into it and just let the Marvel thing just go away.
Oh wow! And you never just tried again, like a year or so, or a couple of years later?
I don't know. I just kept going forward. I never went back. I just kept going from design job to design job, working all over Manhattan, and then I got into an art agency, and I was in Time Magazine and Colgate Palmolive, and I just kept going. I was just like make money, and it didn't hit me until my late 30s, where I was just like, I'm tired of designing shit for other people. I want to do my own thing, and I want to put my own thing out there in the world before I die. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life just creating other people's dreams and never exploring my own.
Oh, that's cool. Go ahead, Mike.
Of a very funny story. Gary, I doubt if you've heard this story, but it involves our buddy Mark Manus.
Okay, Mark is a good guy. He has he has a small publishing company, comic book publishing company called Atlas Unleashed, and
Atlas Unleashed publishes my books at the Sphere.
Yes,
but this is back when I was working at DC, and he was very supportive of me during that time, and I think maybe a little bit on the healthy, envious side, where he wished that he was doing something. And I had talked to him about some of the things that I was doing while I was at the bullpen at DC, and we talked about it, and I had this idea where he wanted to know what I did as a letterer who did art and lettering corrections on a DC book. He wanted to know what that was like. So I snuck a book out and put it in his hands and told him, here's what you have to do, here's what you have to correct, bring it back to me the next day.
Huh.
Did he ever tell you that story, Gary?
He kind of did, but he didn't. But he was. It's a very abridged version he told. But go ahead with yours. I didn't know that you snuck out the book, huh?
Yeah, snuck out the book because the one office that sat adjacent to the publishing bullpen, and this was back when the offices were at 666 Fifth Avenue.
Right, I remember.
It was Bob Rozakis' office. He was the head of production, and he had a rack across from his desk filled with completed original art of like all the upcoming books, and anything that was in the front of the of the pile was going to be published bassoonist, and anything in the back had a little bit extra time left. And anybody could go in to Bob's office, whether he was there or not, and pick whatever the next book was to work on.
Really? That's wow.
Yeah. So,
Jeez.
I went into his office. He, of course, wasn't there. He was out for the day. I went to the very back, and I pull out this book, Haywire, number 4.
Yes, I remember that book.
I looked through it. The corrections for the lettering corrections and the art corrections were extremely minimal. Mark could knock this out in a couple of hours if he followed my instructions. I wrote out everything that he needed to do. I gave him a copy of the script. I put the art in my portfolio, got it out of the office, took it straight to him before he got on the PATH train, the Long Island Railroad train, rather.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave him all the instructions. I said, make sure 24 hours from now we meet, you put this back in my hand.
Okay, well, why'd you only give him a day to do it?
Because I didn't want the book to be noticed as missing if I waited any longer than that.
Ah, okay. Okay, I didn't know if you just wanted to make him work under pressure or... But
that was part of it, too. But most importantly, I didn't want there to be so much time that people will start to notice, hey, where's Haywire 4? It should be here.
Right. Oh, okay.
So he did it, and he put it back in my hands, and of course it looked like crap because it was the first time he'd ever done that. He followed my instructions, but yeah, you could tell it was amateurish.
Right.
And and that's not a diss on him. It was just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought it back. I came in early the next morning before anybody else got there. Put it back in the slot where I originally got it from. 2 days later, Bob comes walking into production. He's got the book under his arm. He's fuming.
Ooh.
He's like, who did this? Who did this work? He went to everybody's desk. Did you do this? Did you do this book? Mike, did you do this book? I said, what is that, Bob? Is that, that's Haywire number 4. No, I've never seen that, Bob. And he just looked at me, I'm trying to guess, does he know something? And the longer he looked at me, the more I realized maybe he suspects, but he doesn't know for certain, so he can't really say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing anybody could say, regardless of how much it looked like crap. It was done. The production was complete. It was ready to go to press. That's what they did.
Really? They did it with Mark's work?
Yeah, and they never knew.
Wow. Was there any backlash from the fans on how the lettering looked or anything?
Nope.
Well, I guess that shows you what people...
I think the only person that Mark ever told years later from DC was Andrew Help.
That's cool. He made a hint of it on his Facebook page a couple of months ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Like the anniversary, I was like, oh, okay, I want to hear the full story someday. So nobody made a big deal.
How do letterers get treated? I mean, we know that we discussed it earlier, or that letterers don't get any real respect or attention or acknowledgement. But I mean, what about with a team of creators? You know, you're on a book working with a writer, penciler, inker. You know, do they really interact with you beyond the needs of the project, or they just kind of like, here's your pages, letter them, and then they just kind of go about their business, or what?
Well, it depends on the team you get either blessed or cursed with working with.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fortunate in the majority of projects that I've worked on.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had good rapport with the writers and artists that I've been working with. Sometimes it worked a little too well, and I say that in reference to when I was working at Topps Comics, I was lettering most of the entire run of Zorro.
I remember that, yeah.
Written by Don McGregor. Now, I love Don, but sometimes Don frustrated the hell out of me because he wanted to make the most minute changes. He would question everything as far as my balloon placements. Why did you put that there, Mike? How come you didn't put that down here? Well, Don, the flow is going to work better if I put it here as opposed to where you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, well, it doesn't work for me. Can you put it back where I originally had it? I'm like, okay, Bob. I'm okay, Don, no problem. And Don, he was kind of like a frustrated prose writer at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing Zorro, and it used to frustrate me while I was lettering it because some of the tangents that he would go off in the storyline made no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want to know about the history of piñatas in Mexico. Okay?
Yeah, I know.
The story.
There are a lot of guys like that do reviews, or there's a lot of writers like that on, and even on those comic book sites like comicbook.com and Bleeding Cool, where they just start rambling about shit that has nothing to do with the article I clicked on.
Right.
You know, and it's like they start talking about their past and their childhood and their dog and whatever the fuck. I just want to know what's happening. I would just want to know what happened in Avengers that got me to click on the fucking title in the first place.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. These guys want to wax poetic instead of getting to the point, and that's
exactly. And that was definitely the way Don wrote, at least the way he wrote Zorro.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote that way for Black Panther too, but at least it worked for Black Panther. It didn't really work for Zorro, but that's my own opinion, and that's not slam on Don.
Right.
Again, I love Don, but
yeah,
you know, that was just the fact of working as Don's letterer on Zorro and Lady Rawhide.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go back for you at DC, Mike, when Bob Rozakis had that Haywire 4. Why did they just send it like off? Why didn't they correct it if it was like a book at the bottom of the pile?
Because by the time Bob came in fuming over the book was due to go to the printer. There was no more time left.
Oh, wow. Okay. Really? And even though everybody was there in the bullpen, they just said, let it, instead of doing like a rush correction job, they just said, let it go. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. And now another question. Earlier you said like guys are getting paid like maybe $10 a page. And that they were always, they were the traffic coordinator of getting everything done. Why is it that now in such a, when, let's face it, the writers are really the stars of comics nowadays more than the artist. That started with like Bendis and Quesada, I would say, that kind of start where the writer became more prominent. Why is the letterer now treated as like a second class citizen or as an afterthought now when you figure the letterer and the writer would be working like more in conjunction now to... You
would think that they would be the dynamic duo, but it turns out to be the writer and the penciler. It's like this. It's like the lead singer and the lead guitarist want to team up, and they ignore the bassist and the drummer.
Yeah, it's really sad how the letterer these days is really not getting any love anymore.
That's amazing. That really is. Yeah.
Even people that you could see in the industry that have talent as a letterer, and that's not what they're known for. Adam Hughes is a great letterer. He's not known for it. Um, let's look at logos for a second. The old Fantastic Four logo. Did you know that logo was done by Saul Brodsky?
Yeah, that I knew. Yeah.
Yeah, who was the vice president of Marvel at the time. That's a great logo.
Yeah, that's it. But that's true. But I'm just amazed that even with more books, it seems on the market than ever before in the last 30 years, let's say, that the letterer is, just wow. That's really sad that he's he's come down to that because between Todd Klein and Ken Brusniak when he was on America,
yeah.
and John Workman, on Thor and everything, and he's always with Walt Simonson. That there would be a little bit more respect in the field.
Yeah, Ken Brusniak, not only for his balloon and caption lettering, but his background lettering.
Yeah.
In, let's say, American flag.
Yeah.
Unparalleled.
Yeah, that's when lettering really became like an art form more than any other time because he was using it as a design graphic as well as a sound effect as well as a narrative piece. It was just amazing.
Yeah, there was a guy, I'm forgetting his name. He was an associate editor for Paragon Press at DC, doing the Big Book series.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone up there to show some samples, and he hired me on the strength of one particular page I did, and I don't even remember what book it was. But I had done, this was a background lettering in a panel. It was a city scene in New York, and it was like a worm's eye view shot of a guy coming up the stairs from the subway. Excuse me, I'm kind of losing my voice a little bit. Mm-hmm. I had to show, well, I didn't have to show, but I chose to show the name of the subway stop, on the sign that's overlooking the stairs as you come up and down. As you've seen, all the subways in New York look like that, for every individual station. Well, in this upshot, in order to make it work, I had to do the lettering in perspective. And, of course, I did this in Illustrator and set it up so that the perspective was seamless with the lettering. You could look and you could tell it wasn't off. It matched the perspective that was going on, the 2-point perspective that was going on in the panel. And I got hired on the strength of that panel alone to do lettering for the Big Book series. Because I could show I could do that for background lettering.
That's so cool. That's cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah, I was proud of myself for that. I was like, yeah, this is cool.
Now you can just do it in Photoshop with that perspective grid they have. And,
yeah.
And Pete, have you ever done like illustrated other people's stories, or even like inked or just colored or lettered other people's artwork?
I've colored other people's artwork. I think I did some lettering for somebody as a favor once or twice. I can't remember who. I think it was when I was working with this Irish comic label a couple of years ago. They needed some help, and I told them, I was like, that's really not my strong suit. I mean, I know how to get it done, but I wasn't a professional letterer, but I did it for them anyway. And it worked out, yeah, I've done more. Mostly, I prefer coloring other people's work, just because depending on the person in question, it's less of a commitment for me. It's like if I'm going to illustrate a comic, I want to get some decent pay for it, and a lot of these indie guys can't afford it.
I have to admit, as far as lettering goes, and this is the one thing I miss about this job, the best paying lettering job I have ever had,
Mm-hmm.
and Gary can attest to this, was Penthouse Comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's because George just wanted to overpay everybody.
And pay very well, by the way.
Yeah, he just wanted the top talent, and he just wanted to pay the best.
He did. Yeah, for that short time, he did. Because whereas I got $25 a page from everybody else, George paid $50.
Wow, nice.
And that was the regular fee. If he wanted a rush job for me, which meant I had to go in the office and stay there overnight, he doubled for $50.
Yeah. Yeah. Those days are long gone.
Yeah. Of course, George ran that office like it was Animal House. But,
right. One day it's going to be me, you, Mike, and maybe we'll get Reddington or some other people. We'll Skype and we'll just talk about our days at Penthouse.
Oh my God!
But yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. But Pete, how's it going on? Now, Pete, you're doing your own graphic novel. Mike, you're doing your stuff through Atlas. What's it? Oh, I just forgot the name. Atlas Unleashed. And where are you guys on that now? Like, are you guys going to be at San Diego or New York Comic Con coming up, or where can we see progression of your work and your lettering samples? Like websites, Facebook, anywhere?
Pete, you want to answer that one first?
Me, well, I'm still working on War Dogs. I should have book 1 ready in another few months, probably by the end of spring, hopefully beginning of summer.
And and you're self-publishing that.
Yeah, I'm self-publishing that. I'm gonna go digital first, and then I'll focus on the print after I kind of gauge the audience through the digital release, because it's gotten a lot of support right now, but it could be a completely different story when it comes time for people to actually pay for something.
Oh, okay.
You know how that goes. I just I did my own comics before, and just kind of being a freelancer for so many years. I just know how people are. They're really into something when there's no real commitment. They'll super support. Liking something or wishing you the best takes no effort. It doesn't cost them anything. But when it comes time to put down some money and actually buy it, then you'll really find out who's into it and who's not. So I choose to go digital. That way it's more cost effective, since I don't have to pay a team. It's just me. And I already have things set up where I can put it out digitally, get it out there through social media, and just test the waters before going ahead with the print. That way, that way, since because it's all me, and then so at least that way it's like the only one who's going to benefit or suffer will be me, and I just wouldn't. It would be too stressful for me to have other people with me, and then taking the same kind of a risk, and I just don't want to have anybody else's worry on my shoulders on top of my own. You know what I mean? I don't want to disappoint anybody,
right?
And I don't want the added stress of them kind of, I guess, relying on me to make it happen. If that makes any sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
A lot of other, because even if I had other artists, let's say I had a inker or a letterer or whatever, all they have to do is worry about their part, and then just sit back, and then it's all on me, and then they can just kind of benefit if it works or if it doesn't. You know what I mean? It's more, it's it's much more of a gamble for me, since I wrote the whole thing, and I'm taking the responsibility of everything, of all the disciplines that are necessary to get it done. But the other part is, it's really satisfying doing it exactly the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I reach out and get feedback here and there from my peers, of course, people whose opinion I respect, and I know I can get an honest opinion without too much personal bias. To correct myself along the way. You know what I mean? Not trying to say I know everything that I'm doing is perfect. I have doubt all the time, like I think any artist does.
Yeah.
But
We
know,
are our own worst critics.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, there's nobody can put us down better than we can.
Mm-hmm.
And but also there's that satisfaction of getting it done the way I want, the way I see it in my head, and the way I envision it. And so far from the little teaser that I put out, you know, that 12 page teaser I put out, the response has been such that I can relax a lot more and just keep diving into the work and not stressing over it as much as I did last year when I was writing it. Because when I was writing it, it's like I had it in my head. I knew what it was going to look like, but nobody else can see that until you actually draw something. So I had to keep trying to over explain to people, and I just got sick of doing it because that's draining in and of itself. But now that I'm actually working on pages, and people are seeing it, and they're seeing it colored and lettered, and they're getting a sense of the story. It's like the response has been better than I could have ever imagined. So hopefully it translates, you know, into purchases when it comes time.
Yeah, hope so. We'll be pushing it. We'll be pushing it. And Mike, so you're working on your own creator-owned series?
Yeah, I've got a couple of fingers in different pies. Well, the main one right now is Tip of the Spear, which is the series that I created for Atlas Unleashed. It debuted at New York Comic Con 2014. Was it 2014? Was that the
Yes.
last time?
Wait, hold on. Was it 2014? I'm trying to think. I closed my store in 13. I think it was 14. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was still living in Hawaii back then. So it debuted in the pages of an anthology entitled Atlas Unleashed Adventure. And it was a flip book where one side showed a steampunk Victorian era time travel adventure called The Adventures of Annabelle Avery, which was written by Matt Kelly, and I'm forgetting who the artist on that was. And that was on one side, and my story, Tip of the Spear, was on the other side. And the thing about it was, on the Annabelle Avery side, it was traditional storytelling. And traditional, when I say traditional, I mean that the pages are like any comic book where everything is printed vertically. When you go to the flip side of that book and you see Tip of the Spear, all the storytelling is horizontal.
Yeah, I thought that was nice.
Yeah, which has been done extremely infrequently in comics.
Mm-hmm.
The most notable being Fantastic Four 253, I want to say the issue number is, where John Byrne did an experiment where he told the whole story vertically.
Yeah.
Which I thought was magnificent. So, and that actually wasn't my idea. That was Mark Maz's idea for me to tell the story that way. And I fell in love with it, so now every adventure that I do on Tip of the Spear is going to be told that way. But, so I call it my widescreen format.
Right.
Yeah, but Tip of the Spear is basically, if I was to Hollywoodize the concept, you know, if a Hollywood producer was going to ask me, what is Tip of the Spear like? And he would expect me to merge two existing genres or IPs together to tell a different story. He would say, you know, what would you come up with? What is Tip of the Spear? I would say Tip of the Spear is Tom Clancy meets Harry Potter. So what exactly does that entail? Well, Tip of the Spear is the story of a man named Maximilian Cortez, or Max Cortez for short. And he is a spy for the American government, for a super ultra secret and covert branch of the government that handles assignments that are easily disavowable because they involve the presence and existence of magic. Max Cortez is a sorcerer, and he investigates, as per his mandate by the agency that hires him. He investigates and deals with mystical threats to national security. So
That's cool.
It's been a very interesting journey for me to create and maintain Tip of the Spear. One of my inspirations was a book that Avatar Publishing, has done, which is a Warren Ellis book entitled Gravel, which he's done several issues of.
Oh, okay.
It's basically the same concept, although the character, whose name is Gravel, works for the British government. And I read a few issues, and I have to honestly say it's one of the few Warren Ellis books that in idea impressed me, but in execution did not. And I looked at it, and after I was done reading a couple issues, I said, you know what, I could do a whole lot better than this.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I honestly believe that I could, and I believe I proved myself with that, because you can attest to that because you've read Tip of the Spear, the first.
I read the first issue. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I haven't been to Comic-Con lately or whatever, or I know you've been busy with other things than your output, and so when the first arc is finished, then I'll read it all in a sitting.
Yeah, and I'm trying to steer Tip of the Spear towards doing a trade paperback, because we actually have enough right now for a first issue. I mean for a first, pretty much a first issue, because I do the stories in 8-page increments.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this artist, and his name is Aaron Paulsmeyer. He did the first issue, and he's done subsequent chapters of Tip of the Spear. At the time I found him, he's living in Kansas. I believe it's Winfield, Kansas. And he has no formal art training whatsoever.
Wow.
And his work just blew me away. It's just phenomenal. I found him on digital webbing. He had posted some sample pages of from Hellboy, Abe Sapien. He did some Abe Sapien sample pages that were just gorgeous. And I said, he has the command of storytelling, of anatomy, of light and shadow. He was one of those natural, professional quality talents. And I tried to snap him up as quick as I could.
Very cool.
Awesome. He's just absolutely awesome.
Very cool.
I couldn't imagine doing Tip of the Spear without him.
Oh, nice. That's cool that good. I'm glad you got a nice team going now.
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
And does Atlas and Leash have a website? Is there any preview pages up there?
I did put some up there. They should still be up there. On atlasunleashed.com. And there's a few stray panels there. But I'm thinking about building up my own Tip of the Spear page on there. There is a Facebook presence for Tip of the Spear. If you type in Tip of the Spear on Facebook, you'll find it. We've got some panels there. I also have to credit my colorist, Stephen Schaefer, who I also handpicked from digital webbing, and he's just one of those guys that really understands how to tell a comic book story using color. You know, and I realize there's a lot of guys out there more often than not that just don't understand that. You know,
Oh yeah, that's a discussion for another night to talk about coloring. I think a lot of computer coloring, especially by the big two, just looks like crap. But we'll save that for another. We'll save that for another night.
So that's
really bad.
That's just one of the projects I'm working on. I'm also trying to develop another project for Atlas Unleashed. I wanted to come up with a use of a public domain character, and half of the battle is just trying to find the right public domain character. And for a while, I was looking at a character from the movie serials of the 40s and 50s, Commando Cody.
Yes.
Who is the precursor to the Rocketeer. I kept straying away from him, coming back, and then straying away from him. Things weren't just quite right, and I'm not even 100% certain if the character is even in the public domain. You know, I know the first movie he appeared in supposedly is, but I said, let me pick something easier, something that's going to be a bit more compelling as a storyteller, because I'm doing a lot more writing now than I ever have done before, you know, thanks to Tip of the Spear. But I have found my character, and I'm going to be developing a story, hopefully developing what could be a series on Captain Nemo.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it and developing a connection between Nemo and Atlantis and the lost sunken cities of Atlantis and Lemuria, and keeping it reimagined, of course, but keeping it within the framework of the mid to late 1800s setting that he's written in. And even joining up another of Jules Verne's character creations within the Nemo framework, also involving the character of Phileas Fogg, who was the hero of Around the World in 80 Days.
Right.
So I've got some cool stuff in mind, you know, for these two characters together.
Very cool. The Commander Cody, I was gonna say it's if he was in public domain, you figure Dynamite would have snatched him up by now or something. You know, that's all they seem to do.
Because Dynamite is good for grabbing that kind of genre, you know, for storytelling purposes.
Right.
And there's also a graphic novel project that I'm working on. And this one is based in real life, based in fact, about a gentleman by the name of Bass Reeves. And Bass Reeves was the first African American to ever become a deputy United States Marshal.
Oh, I knew that name was familiar. Isn't he the basis? Isn't he the real
Lone Ranger? Yeah.
Right. I knew the name. I zoned out for a second, and then you said the name. I said, "Wait a minute! I knew that person. That's the first black sheriff, right, or deputy?"
Yeah, first black deputy.
Very wow.
Many, but he was the one that first became prominent. He had control over the Indian Territories, which is now known as the state of Oklahoma. His beat covered 75,000 square miles, and he operated within the Indian Territory, which was governed by the 5 civilized tribes, which is what they were called. And they were the Creek, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole Indians, who are all displaced from their own native territories and deposited at the Indian territories by the United States government. And the U.S. government gave them the permission to police themselves. And they could not police anybody outside of their race. So they couldn't impose any legal restrictions on whites. So white bandits and criminals who found this out started committing crimes in other states and other territories, and they fled to the Indian territories because they thought once they got there, they couldn't be touched. So that's when the U.S. government stepped in and said, we're going to get some deputies, some U.S. Marshal deputies in there, and we're going to clean it up. And one of the first people that was asked and accepted the role was Bass Reeves. And this was in 1875 when he first became a deputy. He left his home on the border of the U.S., on the border of the Indian territories and Arizona. No, I'm sorry, not Arizona, Arkansas, where he had a farm and a wife and 10 children, 5 boys, 5 girls. And his single-minded devotion to the law is legendary. And this is part of where the beginnings of his parallels between his exploits and that of the Lone Ranger start to come into play. And as a matter of fact, the Lone Ranger started as a radio drama.
Right.
In Detroit.
Like Tarzan.
Detroit was where, after Bass Reeves and many other deputies of his like captured criminals and brought them to trial, and they were convicted, they were sent to the federal penitentiary where? In Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and he remained a deputy for 33 years. Is known to have captured and brought to justice 3,000 felons that we know of.
Wow.
Killed 14 men in the line of duty that we know of. And once Oklahoma became a state in 1907, and the Jim Crow laws went into effect, which basically made racial segregation between blacks and whites legal, that ended his career. And he became a municipal police officer in the city of Muskogee in Oklahoma, and remained so until his death in 1910. The one thing that I know about his exploits, once he became a Muskogee police officer, and he had developed a limp, which I think was the only injury that he had acquired in the line of duty as a deputy. He would walk the streets of Muskogee, which there were large portions of Muskogee that were black owned and run. Black commerce, black business was big in portions of Muskogee. One of the earliest regions of the United States to do so at that time. He would walk the streets, and he would have a young boy of about maybe 10 to 12 years old walk with him, carrying a large cotton bag, like a satchel. The bag would be filled with loaded firearms, loaded revolvers, so that if there was any trouble, all we'd have to do was call the boy over, reach into the bag, pull out what he needed, and go to work. But he never had to do that. But the boy walked his beat with him every day.
That's cool, man. That I would really like to see.
I wonder how much of an influence that had in the creation of Batman and Robin, if any. Because, my computer's making crazy noises. I mean, because it's essentially walking around with like a ward.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. That's something that I never really made that connection until you just said that.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
But it's
But
kind of similar to the relationship between the Lone Ranger and Tonto, because while he was a deputy, they employed many scouts who most of the time were Indians, some of which were black freedmen being ex-slaves that were quote unquote emancipated, by Lincoln's decree. And there was a small handful of scouts that were white, and they were chosen because they knew the language, they knew the land, and that's basically the same reason why Bass Reeves was chosen to be a deputy himself, because he spoke several American Indian dialects, Native American dialects and languages, when in fact, for his entire life, he was illiterate. He never learned how to read or write English.
Mm-hmm.
man,
And yet he brought in thousands of criminals. You know,
jeez.
matched the faces of the illustrations on the wanted pages that he carried with him with the people that he was actually supposed to catch.
Man, that I would like to read. I think that's something you should be working on, because that would be a terrific read for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that would get a lot of interest.
The thing that shocks me the most is that if you're not a black person that has lived or is living in the state of Oklahoma, or if you are not part of the law enforcement community, especially the U.S. Marshal Service, I was shocked by the number of black people who I would inquire about Bass Reeves, and they have never heard of him and do not know of his exploits. And
well, a lot of this real history has only come to light over the last decade or so as the internet grew in power, because that was stuff they never taught in school.
That's true. That's
Yep.
Just like the black women that helped make the NASA launch in the '60s possible.
Oh yeah.
You know, nobody knew about them until fairly recently.
Right.
And
those women are still alive too.
Yeah. There's a lot of history that's all just spin.
Yeah, that is true, and that is a good point. The internet is bringing a lot of erased history back.
Yeah,
and that's a good thing. And there's more stories to tell, more legends to read about. More history to catch up on. So that's the one good thing about the internet, other than people yelling at each other under false names.
Exactly. Yeah, it is still the greatest learning tool that we've ever had. I mean, we've never had access to information like this in our lifetimes. And the kids nowadays are growing up with it. All they've ever known is the internet. And they're a lot smarter because of it. And it's weird, like if you tell them, like let's say my niece who's 20, we'll get into conversations about stuff from my past, and it's it blows their minds how just archaic and just insane it seems our history is. It was like a lot of it is lies. Just the simple fact that they couldn't give Bass Reeves his due.
Right.
Somebody had to dig that up. A century later.
Yeah, that is true.
It's crazy. It's like what was that? Who was that going to hurt if people knew about it at the time?
Did you know that towards the end of Bass Reeves' run as a deputy, one of the people that he had to bring to justice was one of his own sons?
Wow.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, one of his sons uh, was wanted for murder. Killed his wife because
Shoot.
he discovered that she was cheating on him with another man.
Mm.
And once the um, once the federal warrant came out on him, um, they they tried to keep the information from Bass Reeves, but he had found out. And as grief-stricken as he was over what had happened, he insisted upon taking the warrant himself.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, he brought his son in for trial. Without a
Jeez.
fight.
That is
His son
something.
did- yeah, his son.
I
did-
really like to read more about this guy.
Yeah,
Just
I think his son wound up doing 20 years in Leavenworth.
Wow.
And
oh
I think
man.
he passed. I think Bass Reeves passed away while his son was still doing time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Just geez, now that's a story. That's
You know, I just like I don't, have you heard? Speaking of, I guess in the same thread of black people in history who were turned into white superheroes on TV. The first non-Japanese samurai was African.
I just saw that on Facebook a few days ago.
Yeah, I think his name was Yasuke or something along those lines. Something with the Y. So I was the first thing I thought of was Afro Samurai. I was like, I wonder if the creators of Afro Samurai knew that and just kind of did their own little interpretation of that.
Well, it's
that's
a damn
true.
It's a damn sight better than The Last Samurai starring Tom Cruise.
Oh, please. Or 47 Ronin or any of those other Dances with Wolves type shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting. Yeah, so hopefully more and more history will be uncovered and guys like you and Pete might could put these into print form and educate more people about this part of history that's been buried for years.
It's definitely overdue.
Yeah, I tell you, that Bass Reeves thing I would really like to read from you, Mike. That seems like you're doing your work and your research, and I would read it. But you know what? I'm going to wrap this up because it's over an hour and a half. But Mike, shout out to Lightning Rod Collectibles. Let people know what's going on.
I have been doing this since the first Thursday in January. Every Thursday night at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, I have Lightning Rod Collectibles, which is my company that I sell comics and collectibles. Bronze Age, Modern Age, Silver Age, Golden Age comics, all kinds of fun collectibles. And I do comic auctions on Facebook Live. And they've been steadily growing. My audience has been growing. The number of people in the group is growing. I've got about 64 people who have joined the group. And I'm starting to really see the competition that is sparked by auction participation go on that show, on that telecast, every Thursday night. I just had one last night, sold a respectable number of books, and I'm just going to keep going forward.
And where can they find you on Facebook?
Yes, the group is Lightning Rod Collectibles Comic Auctions. That is the name of the page on Facebook. Just type that into the search, and you will find it.
Very cool. Every Thursday at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. Very cool.
Correct.
And you also do open auctions too, right?
Yes, I do static auctions as well. I'm going to launch another one probably tomorrow. I call it my lightning round auction, which are 24 hours long, and everything starts at $1. Opening bid $1 on everything.
Oh, okay, very cool. Yeah, you had some I've seen a couple of your live auctions. They are a lot of fun. That's really cool.
Yeah, I try to make it fun. I play lots of background music from soundtracks from different films. Star Trek and Conan the Barbarian and Mr. and Mrs. Smith and a lot of cool music. Taxi Driver. I play a lot of everything. The Ten Commandments.
Yeah, you do play some good soundtrack music.
Yeah.
Cool. And all right, so yeah, Thursdays we'll be looking for you.
Cool.
Pete, your book is coming out soon, and you're still open to. You have Goofy Snacks.
I have a new website I put up since we last spoke for the War Dogs project. It's IamAWarDog.com. So I am a war dog as one word. .com, and the free preview is there.
Oh, cool!
With a couple of blogs, and I'll just be adding to it periodically.
Very nice. IamAWarDog.com.
Yeah, IamAWarDog.com.
All right.
I bought the website last year, and I just finally got together with a buddy of mine who's a computer genius to put a website together. I mean, I had so much artwork that I've been developing over the last year. It really didn't take long at all.
Oh, wow. Nice logo. Very nice.
Thanks.
Very cool. All right. IamAWarDog.com. Follow Mike DeLapine and Lightning Rod Collectibles on Facebook, and Pete Hernandez III on Facebook, and War Dog. Yeah. And that's really cool, man. I'm going to check out the website now before I go to bed.
Sounds good.
Because we've been doing this late at night.
One quick thing I want to add. We had talked early on in this broadcast. We were talking about who the letterer might be in Mage. I have since come up with the answer.
Oh.
Sean Connaught.
Wow. That's where is he now?
I don't know.
Jeez, he probably is Matt Wagner's friend, I bet, at some point.
But he was the letterer on the Mage series.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would have been. Hopefully, he stayed friends with Wagner, because Wagner's a legend now.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
That was one of those books that had a major influence on me, because he did the lion's share of the work back at a time when that was almost unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, there were like two. I remember at the beginning, I think in the first Mage books, there were like two names in the credits: his and I think the colorist or the letterer.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And at the time, it was a very imaginative and well-received reimagining of the King Arthur, the Arthurian mythology.
Yeah. It was brilliant. Yeah, it was completely different from anything else that was out of time.
Yeah, and the coloring too, the airbrushing and everything. It was terrific. It was way ahead of its time.
And he got to grow as an artist and a painter. He was allowed to evolve in those pages, because the artwork is way simpler and much cruder in the beginning, and as the series goes on, he just gets better and better and better. You know what I mean? The characters become more. I mean, they were defined in the beginning, but just like his anatomy got better, his use of color got better. But I think the story was so strong that it didn't matter what the artwork looked like. You were just drawn in right away.
Oh, hell yeah. So, yeah, that was a terrific book. But now, I always appreciated letterers, and now I got to look closer at the craft, though. There's still guys like Todd Klein out there and whatnot. And
now it seems like it's the opposite. It seems like the story is almost secondary to the skin of it all. Like, the production values are super high. The coloring, looks great for the most part. The artwork is more sophisticated, but the stories are just they're completely forgettable.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Especially since the comics industry is retconning their own stories like every couple of months. So why would you invest yourself in any storyline when it's just going to be erased in like 2 or 3 months?
Yeah, that is a shame. That is a shame, because a lot of good stories that will just fall by the wayside. And
it's funny because I remember Stan Lee saying he in one of the documentaries he said in the beginning when he did comics he was embarrassed to tell people that he did comics, so he would tell people that he wrote for a magazine to
I
train.
remember that.
But he was at parties, and then comics were meant. He also mentioned that comics were meant to be disposable. They were done on pulp paper. They were sold for a dime, and you were meant to read them and throw them away. But people loved the stories because they continued. The continuity factor brought readers back again over and over and over again, week after week after week,
Right.
and they started saving them so they could go back through the story, showing that continuity is what built the comics industry in the first place. Now, continuity is the last thing they care about, and the comics essentially are more disposable now than they ever were.
Well,
Because
unfortunately,
nothing-
there's more people hoarding comics because they all think comics are going to be worth something someday.
Yeah, but not if they keep anything that hits it big. They just keep reprinting it until the original is valueless.
Well, they've reprinted a lot of books over the years, and people still want that first edition. Look at what is it? New Mutants. What is it? 98 first first Deadpool. That's been through about 4 or 5 printings, I think, and the first appearance still goes for a lot of money. People want the first of anything.
Yeah.
Those are the collectors, the speculators, whatever. It's the guys like us who just want to read for entertainment value. We just want to read the story.
And yet, the death of Superman is worthless.
Oh well, they overprinted that, and let's face it, people knew he was going to come back.
The copies that they reprint of that shit.
They printed like 8 million of 4 million, 8 million of those. I think I heard Joe Koch say one day. April 1993. That was the bottom of the barrel when it. That's when the whole bottom of the whole industry, just bottomed out with all the reprints and gimmicks and everything, and just April 1993. That was, and yet people will pay for the bagged edition. With the armband, they'll pay for that, but the just the regular issue, you might as well turn it into Kindle. It's just.
Didn't that pretty much lead to the downfall of the industry anyway, or that whole collector culture? It led to Marvel declaring bankruptcy in the long run, didn't it?
That kind of brought that not so much Marvel bankruptcy. Marvel had their own problems, but it was like that like I said, between what DC was doing, Marvel and Image, that was just the tipping point for all that gluttony.
Yeah, and then Marvel tried to do their own distributorship, trying to beat out Diamond, and that failed miserably.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. That whole distributor war thing with Heroes World and Seagate and Diamond.
I think it'll happen again eventually.
Something will happen again, that there'll be a course correction in this industry. Yeah. Because maybe next week we'll talk about the sales numbers that have been coming out, Comic-Con, from Comic-Con, and Marvel is just hitting all-time lows on a lot of their books. It's ridiculous, and that's something we'll discuss next week, because we want to talk about like digital and sales numbers, and just you look at some of these book numbers, under 20,000 for a lot of these books, under 15,000, and it's like what keeps them going? It's just ridiculous. But we'll talk about that next week, maybe.
Cool.
Maybe Patrick will come back in. We'll do a nice 4, maybe we'll do 4 people talk. We'll see. And we'll find out everyone's schedule. Next Friday's the Logan premiere. So.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna see it Thursday. So.
Yeah, if I don't go Thursday night, I go Saturday morning. So.
I've read a lot of good things about it. The early reviews are very, very positive.
All right, good. Yeah, I see that too. So we're going to wrap it up because we're at an hour 45 minutes. And it's 1:30 in the morning and I'm ready to go to bed.
It's been real.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for joining us. It's really good to hear, hear from you and hear stories
man,
about your
fun.
days at DC and Marvel and all in Penthouse.
Yeah.
And it was good that, to you two guys, professionals, talking your craft.
Yeah,
And-
that was fun. It was a little nice change of pace. Hopefully, people didn't pass out and just leave us talking by ourselves.
Well, we'll find out when I put it up, hopefully by Sunday night. And Mike, I'll give you a call Sunday night, Mike.
Okay,
And
sounds good. Yeah, I got some more information to lay on.
okay, yeah, same here. And Pete, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, you got it.
All right, man. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good
Peace.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.